Welcome to another edition of Capital Hoops Live. I'm Marc Stern, president of Capital Hoops. We've got a nice show planned for you here in week 4 of this show, which is hosted by DMVSTREAM. Just a little note about DMVSTREAM. DMVSTREAM broadcasts pro, amateur, college, high school, AAU, and youth games in the D.C., Maryland, and Virginia metropolitan areas. They broadcast these games live to televisions, computers, and tablets and phones. You can go to DMVSTREAM.COM to find out more information regarding this. So without further ado, I think this week I've got some highlights and some interviews from you guys, from games that Capital Hoops has attended in the past week. We saw Gonzaga play a couple times. We saw them strive to run the table in the WCAC and finish with an undefeated record, something they attempted to do last night against O'Connell. They had a scare earlier in the week against St. John's. Our cameras were there for that game as well. And it's playoff time. Brackets have been released for the Maryland State playoffs. There's 4 divisions, as I'm sure everyone knows. The 4A, 3A, 2A, and 1A. Divisions are drawn based on population of the school. 4A is the biggest division, meaning the biggest schools are in the 4A, and the 1A has the smallest schools. So we'll go region by region through the divisions within each 4A, 3A, 2A, 1A classification. We'll break them down. We'll look at the favorites, perhaps some of the dark horses, and we'll go through standings of the private schools. And then we've got some interesting news to tell everyone about. I'm sure some people have heard there will not be a city title game this year for the first time in a long time. I don't know exactly how long it's been, but on a normal every year for the past however many years, 20, 30, 40 years, the winner of the WCAC has played the winner of the DCIAA, which is the Washington, D.C. Public League, and they play each other for the city title game. That game is usually at the Verizon Center, but that tournament is no longer going to be with us. However, we do have a replacement tournament. It's called the Washington, D.C. City Tournament, where 8 teams will participate, and we'll get more into detail with that later in the show. So before we get into any of the brackets and the standings, we're going to show you some highlights of the games that we went to this week. The first game we're going to show you is Magruder. It was senior night at Magruder. J.J. Epps, Nick Griffin, Justin Whitner, Brian Coleman, Matt Ricketts. Those are the 5 main key contributor seniors. There were 8 seniors in total. Now, this is a team that did win the 4A state championship last year. So here's some highlights from senior night and from their game against Paint Branch. Both teams were 17-2 going into this game. So it was definitely the battle of Montgomery County's 2 best teams. Here's highlights from that game. I believe that was last Tuesday.
give it my full effort. I know I have a great guard with me, actually great guards running with me. So I just try to get down the floor and give them more opportunities to get assists.
I felt real good about my performance tonight. I was sick yesterday, had a 101.3 degree fever, and I stayed in bed all day yesterday, came out tonight, and just played my game.
You seemed at the beginning of the game on fire. Couldn't miss a shot if you tried to. Like I said, 19 points in the first half, had the 3 balls going, taking it to the rack, making your free throws. Was this one of your better games as a Magruder Colonel?
Yeah, it was probably one of my better games. You know, I didn't miss too many. I just came out and played. You know, I saw that we went staggered. We needed a bucket. We needed to score. So I just had to score. And in the second half, came out and got my team.
Ending 4A state champions. What's it going to take to bring it back this year?
We're just going to have to keep up the intensity, definitely get after it on defense to keep up with these other counties' teams. You know, we're not the quickest team or the biggest team, but we're definitely going to get after it and try to do the same thing as last year.
Even after big wins like this, we know we can't stay content. There's always room to grow, and so we come and practice every day trying to improve and get better.
So those are some highlights from Magruder's 73-56 victory over Paint Branch. Next game we're going to head out to was a phenomenal game. For the first half was phenomenal. Second half, Gonzaga made their run and put it away. This was St. John's at Gonzaga. This game was last Tuesday night. St. John's led this game by 10 points at halftime. I believe they made 10 first-half three-pointers. They were absolutely on fire. Gonzaga came back after halftime, went on a 17-1 run, spanning the third-minute quarter. Gonzaga ended up coming away with the victory, but it was a very hard-fought victory, and we've got highlights from that game right here. that was Gonzaga's comeback against St. John's Tuesday night. The next game we're going to take you out to was part of a tournament put on by More Than Basketball. That tournament was this Sunday at Wilson High School in the district. A bunch of good games in that tournament. The one game that we had our eyes on that we were excited to see was the Miller School. They're out of Virginia against Princeton Day Academy. That's Akil Carr and Isaac Copeland matched up. Those are two of the top players in the country. Copeland's like a 6'8" wing, dunks the ball, shoots the ball, plays with a lot of fire, blocks shots, just gets above the rim. He had one huge dunk in this game. Wouldn't be surprised if it makes our Capital Hoops top 10 dunks of the year, which will be out in a couple of weeks. But here's some highlights from that game. Akil Carr had a game-high 33 points. Isaac Copeland had 26. And as you'll see, that tandem put on a show.
Isaac Copeland. Akil Carr. Akil That's the end of the ball game, the final score.
All right. The last game we went to this week was WCAC Showdown, Gonzaga O'Connell 2. This game was at Bender Arena on the American University campus. Second time in the last 10 days these teams squared off. Gonzaga number 1, O'Connell number 2. Gonzaga undefeated in the WCAC, and you could tell from the jump that O'Connell really wanted to put a 1 at the end of Gonzaga's record. Very high intensity game. From a lot of people I've talked to, a lot of people think the officiating was poor in this game. They think Gonzaga got a lot of calls. O'Connell, Coach Wooten was very irate on many calls, but you know that's everyone's entitled to their own opinion. It definitely to me looked like there were some questionable calls, but there were questionable calls both ways. I think in most games, the officiating evens out. Now, not all the time, certainly not all the time, but it'll be a topic of discussion whether or not these officials, really wanted to see Gonzaga win or not. I don't have that opinion, but from some of the people I've talked to, they're a little disgruntled about the officiating yesterday, to say the least. So we're going to go to Gonzaga O'Connell. Gonzaga playing this game in attempts to run the table, finish the WCAC perfect at 18-0 in the regular season.
He's the 6'2" sophomore, number 1, Mike Crawford. Down the 5, he's a 6'6" senior, wearing number 2, that's Chris Jenkins.
So Gonzaga finishes the WCAC 18-0, a year after Paul VI finishes the WCAC 18-0. It's pretty crazy because that accomplishment had never happened prior to last year. Since the WCAC went to one division, they used to be two divisions. I want to say about 10 years ago, they went to two divisions. They went from 2 divisions to 1 division, meaning you play everyone in the entire WCAC 2 times. No team had ever run the table. And now in back-to-back years, we have 2 different teams who have run the table. Now it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the WCAC tournament. I'll get into the scheduling and the dates of the WCAC tournament in a minute. But, the bullseye is definitely on O'Connell's back right now. And, on Gonzaga's back. And teams like O'Connell, teams like Paul VI, teams like St. John's, and teams like even DeMatha are going to be gunning for him. So, we may be revisiting the New England Patriots of a few years ago where they, went 16-0 in the regular season and then lost in the Super Bowl. Obviously, Gonzaga can't be content until, they win out in the WCAC finals and take the hardware back to I Street. We're going to go real quick through the standings of some of the private school leagues around here, and then we're going to go to the brackets for the MPSSAA. That's the Maryland State Tournament, semifinals and finals held at Comcast Center. We're going to go through those brackets, but first we're going to go through some of the private brackets. This is the Capital Beltway bracket. As you see, Riverdale Baptist, National Christian, and Princeton Day are all at the very, very top there. Now, the Capital Beltway postseason tournament will be this month. On the 23rd will be the quarterfinals. That's this Saturday. Sunday, the semifinals. And Tuesday, the 26th, will be the championship for the Capital Beltway League. All playoff games will be held at Riverdale Baptist High School. Now we'll go on to the IAC. The IAC is actually over already this past weekend. Bullis beat St. Albans 63-61 to capture the IAC championship. Congratulations to Bullis. In the MAC, Murray lost their very first game of the year to the Potomac School this past week. They've still clinched first place, still clinched a first round bye in the MAC tournament. Now, the MAC tournament will be this Friday, the 22nd, and Saturday, the 23rd. Top 4 teams in the MAC make it to the tournament. The champion and all playoff games will be held at the Potomac School. Now we have the WCAC. As we see, Gonzaga 18-0, perfect. While we're talking about Gonzaga, I want to mention a couple players on Gonzaga. Everyone's very familiar with Chris Jenkins, going to Villanova next year. Been the heart and soul of that team for a few years now. But I feel remiss if I didn't mention Charles Glover. Charles has been, in that program for a couple years. He's always kind of been the guy that no one talks about. He's been a steady performer, doesn't do anything phenomenal, but does everything the right way. He's Gonzaga's second leading scorer this year. He's really picked up the pace when Jenkins has been on cold streaks this year. And Charles Glover is a great combo guard. I guess he's more of a shooting guard, a little undersized for a shooting guard. But he puts the ball in the hole and he shoots the ball at a very high percentage, especially for someone who shoots from the perimeter a fair amount. The other kid from Gonzaga that we really, really need to pay attention to is Bryant Crawford. Bryant's a sophomore, missed his entire freshman season with a broken leg. Bryant Crawford has D1 offers from upwards of 30 schools. From everything I hear, Indiana is the front runner. Bryant Crawford could commit to Indiana as soon as this summer. While it's no lock he's going to Indiana, it just seems that they're the front runner. And with all these kids from the WCAC going to Indiana lately, in Victor Oladipo, in Stanford Robinson, it wouldn't be surprising to see Crawford end up in Indiana. But he has 2 years left at Gonzaga. And when Jenkins leaves, Bryant Crawford, Jordan Abdul-Rauf, that's going to be Gonzaga next year. Bryant Crawford could be a kid who averages 20 points and 8 assists his next 2 years at Gonzaga. And he's someone to keep your eye on. All right, as we go down the WCAC, O'Connell finishes in second place, PVI in third, St. John's finishes in fourth, DeMatha fifth. DeMatha does finish over 500 in the WCAC. They're 500. Their schedule in the year is 500. So let's just see if DeMatha can make a little noise in the WCAC tournament. The WCAC tournament will be held at Gallaudet University. Saturday the 23rd will be quarterfinals. Sunday the 24th will be semifinals. And the championship game will be Monday. That's a week from tonight. Monday the 25th. WCAC championship at Gallaudet. Now we're going to take a look real quick at the DCI AA East and West. This is the West. Now I'm sure a lot of you have heard Theodore Roosevelt lost two games this past week. They lost to Coolidge, and then after they lost to Coolidge, they lost to Dunbar of Baltimore. So Roosevelt definitely a little heat check at the end of the season. They know they're not invincible now. This could end up helping them. You know, a lot of coaches have different philosophies on catching losses, you know, at the end of the season. You know, they don't want to think they're invincible, but they also want to ride, you know, a hot streak headed into the postseason. Now, the DCI AA still has a few regular season games left before the regular season is over. The DCI AA playoffs will begin February 26th and 28th are the first two rounds. Those games will be held at the higher seedings home schools. The DCIA semifinals will be held on March 2nd at Coolidge. And on March 4th at Coolidge will be the DCI AA championship. All right, next, it's time we get to the Maryland Public Schools playoffs. In the 4A, we're going to go division by division here, folks. In the 4A East, number 1 seed, North Point. North Point has one loss this year. That game was against DeMatha earlier in the year. They have run the table since. They've averaged over between 85 and 90 points a game, which is unheard of, in the DMV for a high school team. They're the number 1 seed. They're the biggest outside of Dunbar in the 1A. I think North Point is the biggest favorite to win their region of any region in any classification. So North Point, the 1 seed, Arundel, the 2 seed, 3 seed Meade, 4th seed Old Mill. I think North Point should run away there. The 4A North, very, very interesting bracket here. We've got 5 Montgomery County teams, a bunch of Baltimore teams, Baltimore City and County. The number 1 seed, Westminster, 2, Delaney. The number 3 seed, Paint Branch, finished their season 17-3 in Montgomery County, and they got the 3 seed. 4 seed, Kenwood. 5 seed, Southwestern. 6 seed, Perry Hall. Catonsville, 7. Mergenthaler, 8. And then a bunch of Montgomery County schools are seeded 9 through 11. And a lot of these schools are good basketball schools. Springbrook, Sherwood, Blake, all 9, 10, 11 seeds. You know what that means? That means they're all going to have to play their first game on the road, which could make things tougher. So I think this is a region that could really be up for grabs. We'll have to wait and see. 4A South, very tough division. Pretty much all of PG County. Eleanor Roosevelt, the consensus number 1. Number 2 is Duval. Number 3, Wise. 4, Flowers. 5 is Suitland. Remember, no Roddy Peters for Suitland. 6, High Point, and we go down. I think it sets up for perhaps Wise and Duval in the semifinals, and Roosevelt and Flowers in the semifinals. Roosevelt and Flowers could be a very good semifinal game. I think everyone's expecting Roosevelt to come out of the 4A South. We'll wait and see. 4A West. This is Montgomery County. This is the weakest bracket in the 4A. Magruder must be a 20-1 favorite to come out of the 4A West. Churchill will have something to say about that, and Kennedy will have something to say about that. There's no other team in this bracket that has any chance to get out of the bracket. Magruder, Churchill, and Kennedy. Magruder, the odds-on favorite, defending Maryland 4A state champions. That's if you want to go see a 4A West game, go watch Magruder play. Very fun team to watch. Very good coaching. Shares the ball incredibly well. Electric, dynamite, show-stopping point guard in J.J. Epps. Possibly the best shooter in the DMV, Nick Griffin. That should be Magruder's region to win. Now we go to the 3A. 3A East, J.M. Bennett, number 1 seed. River Hill, number 2. Reservoir, number 3. Annapolis, number 4. That's an open bracket. Anyone could come out of that bracket. 3A North, Milford Mill. They've been the number 1 seed in the 3A North for what seems like 4 or 5 straight years. Last year in the 3A North, Milford Mill was defeated by Patterson, a Patterson team that featured Akil Carr in one of the best high school basketball games Capital Hoops has been to in the last 5 years. Could we see a rematch of Milford Mill and Patterson? Patterson doesn't quite have all the firepower back that they had last year, but they're a good school. They're the 5 seed. Number 2 seed, City College from Baltimore City. A lot of people think it'll be City and Milford Mill playing for a berth to the Comcast Center. We move over to the 3A West. Tuscarora, number 1. North Hagerstown, 2. Urbana, 3. South Hagerstown, 4. So none of these teams are really in the DMV except for Rockville and Northwood and Seneca, but Einstein and Watkins Mill. But the teams with the highest seeds aren't really in the DMV, so we don't know too much about them. We will know something about them soon, that's for sure. And then in the 3A South, Potomac, number 1 seed. Dion Wiley has had an incredible season. I think a lot of people are picking Potomac to come out of this bracket. Thomas Stone, another one. They made it to the Comcast last year. Thomas Stone did. They came very close to winning a state championship last year. They're always at the Comcast Center. Michael Briscoe is their point guard. Phenomenal young guard. He's unsigned right now. But it would be a very good game if Thomas Stone and Potomac met for a berth to the Comcast Center. All right, folks. Well, that's all your bracketology for this week. Next week, some of those brackets will be filled out. The first round of the Maryland State playoffs, all first-round games will be played on Tuesday the 26th. Tuesday the 26th. That is a week from tomorrow. A lot of teams have first-round byes. Those teams that are seeded 1, 2, 3, even the 4 and 5 seeds in certain brackets have first-round byes. So Tuesday the 26th is the first round of the Maryland playoffs. Thursday the 28th or Thursday the 29th will be the second round of the Maryland State playoffs. Third round, those will be regional semifinals, will be the following week, probably on Tuesday again. And all regional championship games will be on Friday, March 8th or Saturday, March 9th. Now, some of those games will be at the schools with the best record. A lot of those games are at neutral sites. So next week, we'll get into that a little more. We'll talk about, where some of these big regional championship games will be played. A lot of them sell out. A lot of them will not let anyone in. If you're a coach, they won't let you in. If you have media credentials, they won't let you in. There's a fire code. I was turned away from a playoff game last year. I've seen many other people from the media, college coaches turned away. It's a very hectic, time of year. So, for those of you who are expecting to report on the game, I advise you, get in touch with those coaches early and have a contingency plan in case the gymnasium is full to capacity. Last thing I want to talk about real quick. I know I mentioned earlier that the DC City title game is no longer in effect. Instead of the DC City title game, I had a chance, for those of you who don't know, I'm on a radio show, 1450 a.m. The show is called In and Out of Sports, every Sunday morning from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. The show is hosted by my good friend and mentor, Coach Butch McAdams, who coached at Murray for 30 some odd years. Coach McAdams does an incredible job, has a 2-hour radio show every week. He has all kinds of guests on his show. And one of the guests he had on his show this past weekend was Clark Ray. Clark is the District of Columbia State Athletic Director. And Coach McAdams had an opportunity to interview him about the new plan, the new tournament that is replacing the city title game. It's going to be a DC City title tournament. There's going to be 8 teams, 2 teams from the DCIAA, 2 teams from the MAC. Presumably those will be Sidwell Friends and Murray. There's going to be 2 charter school teams, and then there's going to be 2 like wild cards. They could be from Independence, they could be from the PVAC, they could be at-large teams. Let's say a team that's not Roosevelt and that's not Coolidge wins the DCIAA this year. Let's say Spingarn goes on a run and wins the DCIAA. If that's the case, they get an automatic bid to this tournament. Then I would assume one of the at-large bids would go to either Roosevelt or Coolidge, whoever doesn't make the tournament. So it's 8 teams. The first couple rounds are played at the higher seeds teams, and the championship is scheduled for March 11th at the Verizon Center. So Verizon Center, March 11th is the championship. Now this year, there will be no WCAC teams in the Washington, D.C. City Championship Tournament. They're working on getting that changed for the future, but as of now, we don't know how that's going to pan out. Real quick, a couple games I got circled on my calendar this week. Tomorrow night, a couple big games. Magruder and Churchill play at Churchill at 5:15. It's ironic because Magruder and Churchill are the number 1 and number 2 seeds in the 4A West bracket. So potentially these teams could be playing in 2 weeks for the right to go to Comcast Center. They could, very well be playing in the 4A West Regional Championship game. And they play each other tomorrow in their last regular season game. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see if Dan Harwood and Matt Miller, if they show their real stuff, they show their real sets, they play their key players, or if they hold back and don't try to give the other team a competitive advantage by seeing their plays, by seeing their sets, their traps, their everything that goes into coaching a game. That'll be interesting. Also tomorrow night, 7:30, St. Maria Goretti versus Montrose Christian. That game is at Montrose, one of Montrose's better home games of the season. As everyone knows, Montrose Christian has a tiny gymnasium, holds about 200 people. So you might want to get there early for that one. St. Maria Goretti, a good team from up in the Hagerstown area. That game is at 7:30. Wednesday, PG County Championship. This game has been absolutely packed the last couple of years. Expecting the same thing this year, especially with the caliber of teams involved. We've got Potomac against Eleanor Roosevelt. That's Dion Wiley and Potomac, who have really burst on the scene, against Eleanor Roosevelt, who seems to be at the Comcast Center and in the PG Championship every single year. So it's nothing new to see Brendan O'Connell and Eleanor Roosevelt there. Potomac, it is something a little new, but they've got a dynamite player, ranked top 50 in his class. He's a junior, and that should be a phenomenal game at Wise High School at 7:30. I think that's it here for Capital Hoops Live. I hope we've given you some good information to take with you as you promenade around the DMV and attend high school basketball games this week and this weekend. A lot of good playoff games. Again, we got the WCAC playoffs. We've got the Capital Beltway Inaugural League. We've got their playoffs. WCAC Championship, the 25th, Monday night. Capital Beltway Championship at Riverdale Baptist, the 26th. So those should be two huge nights of great championship basketball next week. I'd like to thank you again for your time. This is Marc Stern with Capital Hoops. Until next week, have a great week.